The fluid head. Overlooked. Underestimated. It's the silent anchor behind the frame, dictating how we see it all. It's how we define our perspective of the world. Through every adventure, it endures to capture what words never could. Who knew the most boring piece of camera gear was so integral to our creativity? The fluid head, overqualified, underutilized.
All right guys, today we're talking about the Leofoto FH-5L fluid head. So let's just start from the bottom and work our way up. So on the bottom, you'll see that it has a 3/8/16 thread to screw it on. And then it also has this half ball on the bottom, so you can put it inside a 75mm bowl and screw it down. It does come with the screw down knob or tie down knob. On their website, it is kind of weird though. It says this is a 73mm bowl or ball, but I mean, it should be standard 75mm. On one part, it says it's 73mm, and on another part, it says it's 75mm. So I'm just gonna assume that it's standard. I haven't tested it in a bowl yet, but I'm sure it'll work there. We can see here we have our pan control adjustments. So it's a really nice metal feel. It doesn't feel cheap at all. I've used like a Manfrotto 502 head before, and I was pretty disappointed when it came to that because people always talk about Manfrotto being so great, but it was just a really cheap plasticky build. This is definitely not. There's almost no plastic on here. It's a very nice build, all metal. But anyways, we have this pan control here. It's a nice textured metal here. It has a 0 drag setting, as well as 1, 2, and 3. So you literally just notch them, and each time you notch it up, it just increases the resistance of the pan axis. And one thing that I did notice when I first got this fluid head is that I had it on 0 drag, and I was rotating it, and it feels bumpy inside. Like, it didn't feel smooth, so I was like, oh no, there might be something wrong with this. And I'm moving it right now, and it doesn't feel super smooth. I mean, it's smooth, but there's like some friction inside. But I found as soon as you put the weight of a camera on top of it, it perfectly smooths out, so it's just meant to have a little weight on it. It's not broken, there's nothing wrong with it. Just put your camera on it, and it'll start working smoothly.
And I thought this would be interesting too, to show you. So with the pan set to 0 resistance, I'll show you how much kind of freedom this has to spin. So I'm just gonna give it a little twirl. And you see, you get about 180 degrees. I can't quite get it to the 360. It doesn't seem to like to go that much. Not that it really matters, but, oh, well, never mind then. You can't get it 360, you just need to spin it. So it has a lot of freedom. There's almost no resistance, and it's still super smooth. It feels very stable. So I definitely like that freedom of the 0 resistance on the pan axis.
Okay, so now moving up, we have the locking knob. So you just turn it and it locks the pan axis, it won't move. It's generally not good to try to force it to move when it's locked, so I usually leave it unlocked. One thing I don't like about this though is that you can just kind of keep unscrewing this. There's no stopping point to unscrew it, so at first I wasn't really sure at what point it is unlocked, but it really only takes like a half turn to get it fully unlocked, and then you can just keep unscrewing, and I think eventually it'll come off. But I don't like that there's not a unscrewing stopping point. It just makes it feel a little more unsure, you know, where I should stop. I do like though that you can pull these out and adjust it if you're in a tight situation or something and you need to change the adjustment of your knob. You can just pull it out and then put it back in the place where you're able to adjust it. Another thing is we have a bubble level down here, very nice to have. I like this one down here so you can see if your head is level, before you're adjusting your tilt. And then here we have the counterbalance. So this is a 9-step counterbalance. It starts at 0 and it's really nice. I like the ergonomics here. It's right in front of you. You don't need to reach around to another side. Other fluid heads might have the counterbalance adjustment on the right side of the fluid head, but this has it right on the back, which makes it really easy to just reach up there, and it's a super easy knob. You just click it and it sets the counterbalance. One thing I did notice though is that you will need to set the camera back into the neutral position for the new counterbalance to activate, but that's not really a big deal. So yeah, 9-step counterbalance is quite a bit for fine tuning. I did notice when I was out there filming a little bit, some rigs, like I couldn't get it quite right. Maybe counterbalance 6 wasn't quite enough to keep it steady, but counterbalance 7 was too much and it bounced back to neutral position. So with higher end fluid heads, you'll get more counterbalance adjustment. But this is really fine. Like, it's not a big deal, and 9 steps is great. And I do like the 0 as well. That's nice. And 0 really means 0 resistance. That thing will flop over. It's crazy. So
just to give you a feel for how much this is bouncing back at counterbalance 5 and resistance settings 1 on the pan and the tilt axis, it's going to look like, so I'm going to point this all the way down. Counterbalance is kind of fighting me at this level, and then I'm going to let it bounce up. It's going to bounce up a little, but then pretty much stay where you left it. I'll do the same for back here. It's going to bounce up a little, and then kind of stop in place. Now, if I turn the counterbalance all the way up to its max level, you're going to see that, well, I can barely push it down. It's just fighting me there. It's going to bounce right back to level. Now, if I put the counterbalance down to level 1, I'm going to hold it here because it's definitely going to flop over. Yeah, there's nothing really holding me back here. If I let this go, it's going to just fall. Same with back here. It's not really being held up. So depending on the weight of your rig, you definitely need to figure out what counterbalance setting to push. That was a little dangerous right there. Set that back to 5.
So you can see right here, we have the tilt adjustment. So this is again 0, 1, 2, and 3 resistance. So this is really nice for changing how much drag is on your tilt. And I usually like setting it at about a 2. For me, it was good. Plenty of drag, but not too much that it's really fighting you. And yeah, so using the different adjustments for the tilt drag and the counterbalance can help you kind of dial in the correct settings for your rig. What you really want to do is first, you want to balance your rig. So you want to slide it back and forth until it's balanced on the camera and the head doesn't move forward or backward, doesn't tilt down or back. And then after that, you want to dial in a good drag that you like. And then I would say set the counterbalance to compensate for the weight of your camera and test where it holds. And then of course, on the same side as your pan lock, you have your tilt lock. So again, my only gripe is that there's no stopping point for unscrewing it. As I'm unscrewing it right now, it just keeps unscrewing. So it'd be nice if there was a stopping point just to let you know that you've unlocked it all the way. But it really only takes a half turn. So this is tightened, not moving, half turn, and it's good to go. So let's talk about some functionality points real quick. So there is 2 rosette handles on each side. They also have the RE locating pins inside of them, so whatever you're attaching doesn't move, doesn't budge. So the pan handle will attach onto this, and you can choose either side that you want. And then on the same side as the FH-5L logo, there's also another 1/4-20 with the RE locating pins. So this is really nice. This is a nice little addition. If you don't want to mount it on the rosette, there's another mounting spot for you to choose. And on this other side, it looks to be a 3/8 16th hole. So again, mounting stuff here could be useful. Okay, let's move to the top of the fluid head. So Again, up here we have a bubble level. So this is nice to have two, one of them to see how level your head actually is, and then the other one you can tell what the level is of the top of your head, so where the camera would be mounted, because it changes if you tilt the head. And then this takes Arca Swiss plates, so it has a nice loading here. You can side load it, and it just clicks in to let you know that it's secure. And your camera, even if it's not locked down, it won't slide out because there's safety mechanisms, and it'll stop if it slides too far back or too far forward. And then you also have this locking lever on the other side, which is really nice. So you just unlock it, load your camera in, and then lock it, and it's in place. And it's really nice and quick. Some other fluid heads might have a knob, which is fine, but I like the lever more. It only has two stops. It's either open or it's closed. There's no in between. And it's a nice big lever too, like you won't miss it. It's just right, easy to grab. It might make transportation a little difficult though, as it is kind of long, but I don't really think that'll be too much of an issue. Even if you unlock this lever, you cannot pull your camera off until you press this button back here. So there's another safety mechanism. You gotta do two things to get your camera out. And once you do that, you can pull it out, but it's really safe. And that's definitely a huge bonus.
Let's say that your camera's too far forward and you need to adjust the balance real quick. You literally just flip it, scoot the camera wherever you need, just like that, and then boom. And you don't have to be fragile about it either, because the camera is not going to come off unless you hit that. So you can be a little quick with it. You can just kind of go boom, adjust camera, lock. And you don't have to be worried about your camera falling off or anything.
Now let's talk about the included pan handle. So it is a very standard pan handle. It is not telescoping, which I don't like. I think that it should be a telescoping handle. It's just not quite long enough for some use cases. So overall, this fluid head is very nice build quality for the price. Like I said, much better than like a standard Manfrotto one that I've used. Very little plastic. I mean, I can't really tell what's plastic and what's not, but everything feels high quality finish for sure. But yeah, this is really nice. My camera rig that I run fully built out is probably about 9 or 10 pounds, and it handles it well. The counterbalance setting I'm using is at about 6 or 7 level, which is on the higher end of its counterbalance, but it seems to handle it well. Like I said, a more fine-tuning counterbalance head would allow you to really dial in that right counterbalance for your rig. So one thing I did notice, depending on where you have this tilt lock knob unscrewed, it might hit the pan lock. But like I said, since it's adjustable and you can pull it out, it's really not a big deal. One thing I did just notice though is that the tilt lock knob does not pull out like the pan lock knob does. So the pan lock you can pull out and adjust the range that you're working in so you don't hit other things. You can't do that with the tilt locking knob. I do like that this fluid has quite lightweight though. It's really not very bulky. It's tall, but it's not that heavy, which is really nice. If you're carrying it around or going hiking like I did in a little cinematic intro, I had to haul it up a mountain, but it really wasn't that heavy, which was great. Yeah, overall, I really do like the ergonomics on this. It feels nice that the buttons are placed in a good spot. Everything is really tactile too, which is nice for like just how it feels to use, right? Another factor that was probably most definitely playing into maybe my counterbalance fine-tuning issues was that my rig is quite tall because I use a rod system, and then I have the monitor mounted all the way on the top, which can definitely shift the center of gravity and work the internal springs a little harder. But I mean, it still held up. Like at counterbalance 9 with my big camera rig, it still bounced back, right? So it wasn't completely overworking the internal springs. I just had to turn it up all the way. So I probably wouldn't recommend. I think the maximum weight for this fluid head is 15 pounds. I probably wouldn't recommend going above 11 or 12. for this fluid head, especially if your rig is a little taller. Another thing, when you are adjusting the pan and tilt damping, you have to kind of move a little until it locks into place. So the second you turn it, it's not going to immediately give you the more resistance. You kind of have to wiggle it a little until you'll feel it kind of knock inside the fluid head. And then that's when you know that it is in place. And of course, you'll feel the extra drag as well. Currently in the forest trying to track some deer. I saw them this morning just as I was setting up my tripod. The deer was on the path looking me straight in the face, but I didn't have my camera ready. So I tried to set it up as quick as possible, but I only ended up getting the tail end of it as it was leaving and walking through the forest. But I've set up now and I've heard this deer pitter-patting around in the forest, but it has not shown itself again. I saw 2 female deer kind of walk away into the forest, and I saw 1 male deer with his antlers hiding from me. And I've been waiting for him to come out, but he's not. It's been a patient game out here. But as you can see, the FH-5L fluid head is holding up really nicely out here. I've got the full camera rig on. I'm only using a 70-200 because I don't have a longer lens, but luckily I'm on the Canon C50, which has Super 35 mode, so I can get pretty punched in. But I have the counterbalance dialed up to 7 right now because it is a pretty heavy setup here, but it's holding it well, so you can see the counterbalance is working well here. So I can hold it back like this and it just stays. Or same with the forward, hold it down here, and it even bounces back a little bit, so look at that. And then I have the pan resistance set to 1 and the tilt resistance set to 2. So this is offering me some nice stability here, to just kind of use this as I please, leave it where I want. I might actually set the counterbalance down a little bit. It's bouncing back a bit, but it's holding up nicely. The overall profile is pretty tall though, as you can see, just because I do not have a 75mm bowl. Instead, this tripod that I'm using comes with a leveling base already built in, so I just have it screwed on. But yeah, this is the wildlife setup out here in the woods. We'll see if I can get any more deer shots.
So this is the only wildlife shots that I actually ended up getting. This deer was just walking away into the forest when I got my camera ready to shoot. So I didn't stabilize these all in post. There was just the in-lens stabilization, but this was at the focal length equivalent of about 320mm. Just zooming right in so you can see that deer there. But yeah, the fluid head, super stable, and got some nice little shots. So for someone who's never filmed wildlife before and is only using a 70-200, it's pretty good.
And then let's try to do a smooth pan. Okay. So it's still very smooth. You're just gonna see a lot more micro movement there since there's nothing really resisting it. Then let's do a smooth pan. And once again to the left. So it has a nice starting up and slowing down motion. It's not too jerky, which is definitely a good sign. To the left. So number 2 actually has a really nice amount of resistance. I do like that. It's not too much, but it is definitely enough to get you that real smooth movement for long focal lengths like this. Okay, we are now at the highest resistance setting for the pan axis, but let's do the pan test now. So definitely a bit more resistance. It's not a crazy amount more than 2, but it's a nice step up. And we can do really fine movements too. So let's just, if there's an animal or something super far away, panning like that,
Again, all stabilizers are off in the lens. So that's really nice. I mean, that's very smooth from what I can see, and even smoother if you're using a camera with in-body image stabilization or lens stabilization. Again, both of those are off in these tests. As you can see, it moves very fast with little resistance, but since we do have that counterbalance on, if I take it down here, so this is pointing down quite a lot, and then I let go, it springs back up to where it likes to rest naturally. Again, it springs back up. We can do the same if we tilt up, it'll spring back down. So that is at 0 resistance with the counterbalance set to 5. It'll do the same thing depending on the weight of your camera rig. Let's try to do a smooth tilt. It's going to be quite hard with such a little resistance though, so I'm barely putting any pressure on the tilt handle, but it's pretty jerky. It's hard to get a smooth movement with 0 resistance. So let's move it up a notch. So we're going to do that same bounce test. I'm going to point the camera down and then we'll let go. And you can see this time it comes up much slower, and it doesn't even fully quite get back to that spot where it was resting before. Let's tilt up and do the same thing. So yeah, now that we have more resistance, the counterbalance isn't going to quite spring back as fast. So I'm going to move it back. If I do turn the counterbalance up 1, I think we will get a more springy result. Yeah, it comes back a little faster. Not quite though, that resistance is definitely holding it back. Okay, we're back at counterbalance 5. Now let's try to do a smooth tilt with tilt resistance set to 1. Okay, that was a little smoother. Okay, that was definitely smoother than tilt resistance 0, but still pretty hard to get super smooth pan without those jerky movements. Again, all stabilizers are off inside the lens and the camera, so that is just purely what you are seeing from the stability of the tripod and the fluid head. So we're going to do that same counterbalance test. So let's point it down. Again, we are at counterbalance 5, and I'm letting it go. And yeah, it's not even quite getting back up there this time. There's a lot more resistance. But it keeps it in a nice place. You know, if you're just trying to set the camera in a spot, it'll hold it there pretty well. You might need to dial in the counterbalance a little better than I did. 5 is what I set it to. It seems to work pretty well for this rig, but you might want to go plus or minus 1. And then let's do the same with up, and you're going to see that it's going to not quite make it down. It's barely moving because of that counterbalance spring and the added resistance. Now let's try to do a smooth tilt down with tilt drag setting 2. Okay, that might have been a little user error, but let's tilt up. It's definitely a little smoother. My hand is not the steadiest, so let's do our counterbalance test. Let's start up. And you can see it's really barely bringing it down. It holds it quite in place from where you left it. And let's go down. And then let go. It's moving a little more up, but yeah, quite slow, quite a lot more resistance. So that's good if you want to hold it in place. And now let's do our tilting movements. And up. Okay, it was definitely a little easier to get a smooth tilt that time. Again, not the steadiest hand, and there's no stabilization going on whatsoever right now. So I'm not gonna expect it to be perfectly smooth. But the fluid head feels super smooth and it's functioning great. But yeah, I would recommend using some kind of lens or camera stabilization if you're trying to do very smooth pans at very long focal lengths. But this fluid head handles it really well. So I'm gonna try to do a smooth tilt and pan up and to the left. Now down and to the right. So that's a pretty hard movement to do, but I would say there was a little bit of kind of stepping where it goes one direction, then the next direction. Again, this is very hard to purely test because it's mostly user-based, but the fluid head is performing great. You just have to really nail that movement. Okay, the next thing that I'm going to test for is drift when you lock the axis. So I'm setting it to 1 resistance because at 0 resistance, there's gonna be a lot of shake anyways, just from the movement of the knob. So we're setting to 1 resistance. This will be for the pan axis. So I'm going to lock the knob and we're gonna see how much it drifts left or right to where it wants to sit. Okay, as I tighten down the knob there, you can see that it drifted a tad to the right, just a little bit. It's pretty good though. There's not a lot of movement there, which is definitely good to see. Okay, I'm going to unlock the pan axis now, and I'm going to lock the tilt axis here. Again, we're at counterbalance 5, resistance setting 1. Okay, there was almost no movement there. So that was a lot better than the pan axis. That was definitely very smooth. Not very much movement at all there. So if you lock the pan axis, it might drift just a hair, which is pretty normal in most fluid heads from what I've seen. So nothing to worry about there. No oddities. It's performing well in that regard.